something meaningful from the ashes of his old fame. The youth centers he managed were thriving. The teenagers he mentored looked up to him, not as a celebrity, but as a man who had fallen and learned. During one workshop, a boy asked him if he'd ever stop loving Yandy. Mendeecees smiled, shaking his head slowly. "Love don't turn off," he said. "It just learns new ways to exist." Around that same time, Yandy took her children on a winter trip to New York. They went skating, laughed until their hands went numb, and sipped cocoa in the cold. On the last night, as snow began to fall, she walked alone through the city streets. The cold bit at her cheeks, but it felt cleansing. She stopped outside a familiar building, the one where she and Mendeecees once filmed their first season together. The lights in the windows glowed warm. For a brief second, she saw flashes of her younger self there, smiling, in love, unaware of everything that would follow. She whispered a small prayer, not for him, but for peace that would last. Back in Atlanta, Mendeecees was alone in his studio when his phone buzzed. It was a photo from their son Yandy and the kids laughing in the snow. Nothing else, just that. He stared at it for a long while, smiling faintly. He typed, "They looked happy," but didn't send it. Instead, he saved the picture quietly in his favorites. The months rolled by, and when spring returned, so did life's quiet grace. Yandy's documentary premiered, the one she had spent nearly a year crafting. It wasn't about heartbreak, it was about rebuilding. The final scene showed her standing in front of a mirror, saying, "Healing isn't about forgetting the past. It's about remembering it without living there." The room erupted in applause, and viewers online called it the most powerful moment of her career. Mendeecees attended the premiere privately, sitting in the back row, unannounced. When her final line played, he lowered his head, clapping softly. Afterward, he slipped out before she saw him, but she knew he'd been there. Later that night, she found a single white rose left on her car seat with a note that read, "You turned the pain into something beautiful. Proud of you." No signature, but she didn't need one. She tucked the note in her purse and drove away in silence, her eyes glistening. In the years that followed, both continued their paths. There were no public reunions, no staged apologies, no surprise photos, just two people living separate lives with the quiet dignity that comes after surviving the storm. Still, once in a while, their paths crossed. At a charity gala, at a school event, at a quiet restaurant where coincidence did what fate used to. They would exchange polite smiles, brief nods, small moments that said, "I see you, and I'm glad you're okay." And every time, it felt like the right kind of closure, the kind that doesn't reopen wounds, only honors what was. On a warm spring evening, Yandy gave one of her final interviews of the year. When asked if she still believed in love, she smiled gently. "Of course," she said, "love doesn't fail. People do, but if you learn from it, it still wins." Somewhere across the city, Mendeecees was watching that clip on his phone, his lips curving into a faint smile. "Yeah," he whispered, "it still wins." And with that, the last traces of their story slipped peacefully into Atlanta's long memory, no longer a headline, no longer a heartbreak, just a legend of two people who lost each other in the noise, found themselves in the silence, and left behind a love story that the world would never quite forget. Years later, Atlanta had changed. The city was louder, flashier, full of new faces chasing the same spotlight that once followed Yandy and Mendeecees everywhere. Yet every now and then, someone would bring them up a throwback clip, an old interview, a line from a reunion episode, and the comments would flood again with nostalgia. They were real. They taught us about love and loss. They were the heart of that era. Yandy had built something lasting. Her foundation had grown beyond what she ever imagined, reaching cities she had never even visited before. She became the face of rebuilding, not just for women, but for anyone who had been broken in public. Magazines still called her Grace Under Fire. She moved through life like someone who had made peace with every ghost. Her children were older now, thriving, their laughter still her favorite sound. Sometimes they asked about the past, about what happened between her and their father. And she always answered gently, "We both had lessons to learn." Mendeecees had carved his own quiet path. Fame no longer interested him. Peace did. His community center had expanded into several locations across the state, and his talks had become raw and honest. He spoke not as a man seeking redemption, but as one who had found it. People respected that. One evening, at a local youth conference, someone asked what his biggest regret was. He paused, thought carefully, then said, "Not losing her, making her lose trust in me. That's something I'll carry, even with forgiveness." The crowd went silent. They hadn't spoken in over a year. Not from bitterness, just distance, the kind that comes when two lives finally settle into separate rhythms. But every now and then, their lives brushed past each other like wind crossing paths. A tagged photo, a mutual event, a familiar name mentioned in passing. Each reminder gentle, never painful. One autumn evening, Yandy attended a gala in New York. It was a milestone event celebrating women who had turned adversity into advocacy. She accepted an award for her humanitarian work, her voice steady but emotional. "Life doesn't always give us the story we wanted," she said, "but it gives us the chance to write a better ending." When she stepped off stage, she caught a glimpse of a familiar face in the crowd. Mendeecees, older now, his hair trimmed short, wearing a dark suit, smiling softly. He hadn't announced he'd be there. He just came quietly to clap for her. Their eyes met across the room. No words, no drama, just recognition. The kind that doesn't need explanation. After the event, they met briefly in the hallway. "You came," she said, her tone warm but measured. "Couldn't miss it," he replied. "You've come so far." "We both did," she said. There was a silence that felt like peace, not distance. For the first time in years, neither of them felt the weight of what happened, only gratitude for what it taught them. "You happy?" he asked, the same way he always did. "Finally," she said, smiling. "And you?" "Getting there," he admitted. They hugged briefly, the kind of embrace that says goodbye without saying it aloud. A quiet, full-circle moment. Then they walked in opposite directions, each toward a future that no longer depended on the other. Months later, Yandy released her first book, still standing, How to Heal When the World is Watching. It opened with one line that everyone remembered. "I once believed love was meant to be proven. Now I know it's meant to be lived on sometimes. It's meant to be left." When the book tour reached Atlanta, the final stop, she sold out every seat. In the front row sat someone few noticed: Mendeecees, wearing a baseball cap low over his eyes, listening from the shadows. He didn't approach her afterward. He didn't need to. She was glowing, whole, exactly where she was meant to be. As he left the theater, he stopped outside and looked up at the night sky. The city hummed around him, the same Atlanta that had witnessed their rise and fall. He smiled faintly and whispered, "We did good." And somewhere across town, as Yandy closed her hotel window and looked out into the same sky, she whispered the same words back, without knowing why. They hadn't been together in years, but the truth lingered quietly between them. Some stories don't end in reunion or regret. They end in understanding. And that, in its own quiet way, was love too. Spring came again, softer than before, with air that smelled of rain and something like forgiveness. The years had stretched enough to make everything feel distant, told headlines, gossip, rumors, all of it now belonged to another lifetime. Atlanta was different, and so were they. Yandy lived in a sunlit house near the edge of the city, surrounded by flowers she planted herself. Mornings started with quiet, not chaos. Her kids were teenagers now, loud and full of energy, but the noise was good. It was a reminder of everything she had chosen to protect. Her career had evolved too. She wasn't just a public figure anymore. She was an institution. Her foundation funded shelters. Her book had become required reading at several universities. And her speaking tours sold out everywhere she went. People still asked about Mendeecees sometimes. Interviewers tried carefully, tiptoeing around the subject. Yandy always smiled politely and said, "He's doing well. We both are." That was her truth. Simple.com. Complete. Mendeecees had aged differently. His hair was touched with gray, but his presence had deepened. The man who once thrived in the noise now carried himself with quiet discipline. He ran 3 youth centers across the South, each one dedicated to giving second chances to kids who had grown up like him. His days were long but peaceful. Sometimes, he still caught himself thinking about her, not the heartbreak, but the laughter, the warmth that used to fill their house. He didn't miss the pain. He missed the stillness that came after it was gone. One morning, while reviewing paperwork at his office, a reporter came by to film a segment on his community work. After the interview, they asked him off camera if he ever regretted how public his past had been. He smiled faintly. "Nah," he said. "You can't hide from what made you. I used to think our story ruined me, but it built me. It just took me a while to understand how." In another part of the city, Yandy was preparing for a new project, a mentorship initiative for young girls. During a planning meeting, one of her assistants mentioned that Mendeecees had reached out to donate. She paused for a second, then nodded. "Tell him thank you," she said. "Tell him it means a lot." She didn't ask for more details. She didn't need to. The gesture said everything. The launch event arrived 2 weeks later. It wasn't supposed to be anything grand, just a small gathering for sponsors and volunteers, but Atlanta being Atlanta, cameras showed up anyway. Yandy moved through the crowd with ease, greeting everyone, her laughter genuine. She didn't see him at first. Not until she turned toward the entrance and caught sight of him standing there, holding a donation envelope. Their eyes met across the room. Years of history folded quietly into that single glance. She walked over, composed but kind. "You made it," she said. "Had to," he replied. "This is important work. Thank you for supporting it." "You're doing something special?" he said softly. "You always did." They talked for a few minutes about the kids, the program, the city, but underneath the words was something unspoken. Not longing, not regret, just mutual respect. The kind that comes when two people finally outgrow the version of themselves that hurt each other. Before he left, he handed her the envelope. "For the next generation," he said. She smiled, touched but steady. "You're part of that, too," she said. "Don't forget it." That night, after everyone was gone, she opened the envelope. Inside was a check, generous enough to fund the entire first phase of the program. Tucked beneath it was a short note written in his familiar handwriting. "You built something beautiful out of everything that broke us. Keep going." She read it twice, then folded it carefully and placed it in her desk drawer. Months later, they crossed paths again at their son's graduation. The day was bright and loud with celebration. Cameras flashed, families cheered, and for the first time in years, they stood side by side, smiling for a picture with their children. When the photographer thanked them, Mendeecees looked at her and said quietly, "We did good." "We did," she said, her voice warm but final. After the ceremony, he left early to avoid the crowd. Yandy stayed a little longer, watching their son laugh with friends, proud beyond words. As she drove home that evening, the sunset painted the sky gold, and for the first time, she realized the story had ended exactly as it should, have not with heartbreak, not with reunion, but with peace. That night, Mendeecees posted a single photo of the graduation program. No caption, no tags, just the date, the memory, and a quiet reminder that some chapters don't need to be rewritten. And somewhere across town, Yandy scrolled past it, smiled, and whispered the only thing left to say: "Thank you." The city slept under a warm spring sky, and for the first time since their names had shared the same headline, both hearts once broken, once burning were finally at rest. By the time another summer rolled through, the story of Yandy and Mendeecees had become part of Atlanta's folklore, whispered now and then, like an old song that people still remember the words to. New stars had risen, new scandals came and went, but theirs remained the one story no one could quite replicate. It wasn't just love and betrayal anymore. It had become something quieter, more humane, a testament to what it means to outgrow the storm that once defined you. Yandy's world had settled into something golden. Her mentorship initiative had expanded nationwide, supported by major sponsors, with young women quoting her speeches the way they once quoted her reality TV moments. She no longer lived in the shadow of what happened. She lived in the light of what she had built afterward. Mornings began with calm. She wrote, taught, traveled, and laughed often. People said she glowed differently now, like someone who had found peace without needing applause for it. Mendeecees kept working with the youth centers. He was softer now, his voice steadier, his life slower. He'd stopped searching for redemption in public approval. Instead, he found it in small victories: the teenager who got his diploma, the boy who stayed out of trouble because of his guidance. When he spoke at conferences, he never mentioned names, but everyone knew which story shaped his lessons. "You can rebuild anything," he would tell them, "but you have to start by rebuilding yourself." One afternoon, while organizing files at her office, Yandy received a letter. Handwritten, no return address, but familiar in its neatness. She opened it slowly. "Dear Yandy, I saw your interview last week. You spoke about forgiveness like it was sunlight. I wanted you to know that some of us are still learning to stand in it. Thank you for never speaking ill of me, even when you could have. That kind of grace changes people. I'm one of them. M." She sat there for a long while, reading the words again and again. No tears, just a deep exhale. She placed the letter inside her journal and wrote beneath it, "We all find our light in different ways." Later that month, they met one last time, quietly, privately, not for cameras, not for closure, just to people who had shared too much history not to meet as equals. It happened at a charity dinner in New York, far from Atlanta's curious eyes. He arrived late, wearing a simple gray suit. She was already seated, calm and poised, her laughter blending into the hum of the room. When he approached, she looked up and smiled, not the old wounded smile, but a peaceful one. "Long time," he said. "It's been a good while," she replied. They spoke softly about their children, their work, the world. The conversation moved gently, like a tide, no tension, no undertones. At one point, he said, "You really built something special." She met his eyes and said, "So did you, just in your own way." They clinked glasses once, the sound small but sincere, and in that moment, everything that had ever been wrong between them finally found its place in the past. After dinner, he walked her to her car. The city lights painted both of them gold, like the final scene in a story that no one needed to narrate anymore. "Take care of yourself," she said, her hand brushing his arm lightly. "Always," he said. "You too." He watched as she drove away, headlights fading into the distance. And though the night was cool, something warm lingered in the air, an understanding that they had reached the end, not in bitterness, but in balance. Weeks later, Yandy spoke at a university commencement. Near the end of her speech, she paused and said, "One day, you'll thank the people who broke you, because they taught you where you end and where you begin again." Her voice didn't tremble. It glowed. In the crowd, unseen, Mendeecees sat listening. He didn't need to be acknowledged. He just wanted to hear her voice one more time, the same voice that had once argued, cried, loved, and now spoke with peace. When she finished, he stood with the rest of the room, applauding quietly. And that was how their story stayed, two lives no longer tangled, but forever connected by what they had survived. Atlanta had forgotten the noise, but not the lesson, that sometimes love's truest ending isn't a reunion. It's the moment both hearts finally rest, free, facing different directions, beneath the same forgiving sky. As the years continued their quiet drift, the noise around them faded completely. Atlanta had moved on. The world had to, but every now and then, someone would post an old clip from Love and Hip Hop, a scene of laughter, an argument, a tearful apology, and the comments would fill again with nostalgia. This was real. They don't make stories like this anymore. They grew up in front of us. By then, Yandy lived mostly outside the public eye. Her name still carried weight, but she no longer chased cameras. She had found contentment in teaching workshops, consulting for networks, and spending time with her family. Her hair had silver strands now, and she wore them proudly. Peace had settled into her face, that unshakable calm that comes only after you've survived everything you once feared. Mendeecees still lived in the city, though in a quieter part near the outskirts. He ran a youth foundation that had expanded beyond anything he'd imagined. There were murals of him on neighborhood walls, not as a celebrity, but as Mr. Harris, the man who showed up, who gave kids second chances. He never sought interviews anymore. He'd learned that sometimes the best thing you can do with your story is live differently afterward. One late afternoon, Yandy received a message from their eldest son. "Dad's foundation is doing an anniversary dinner next month. He asked if you'd come." She looked at the text for a long time, then typed back, "Tell him I'll think about it." A few weeks later, she did go. The event was small, elegant, filled with people whose lives had been changed by the work Mendeecees started. He was on stage when she entered, thanking donors and talking about how far they'd come. His voice carried a gravity that made the room still. "This work," he said, "isn't about saving people. It's about showing them they can save themselves. I learned that lesson the hard way, but I'm grateful for it." When his eyes caught hers in the audience, he paused for a heartbeat, not startled, just aware. The faintest smile crossed his face. After the speech, she approached him as the crowd applauded. "You did good," she said, echoing the words she'd said years ago at their son's graduation. "Only followed the blueprint," he replied, nodding toward her. They laughed softly, the kind of laugh that only people with shared scars can manage. They spoke for a few minutes about family, about the work, about how strange it felt to be standing on the same ground that once carried so much tension. "We made it through," she said. "In our own way." "Yeah," he answered. "We did." When the night ended, they hugged steady, comfortable, familiar. There was nothing unresolved left between them. No longing, no bitterness. Just a people who had loved, lost, and built something sacred from what remained: respect. Months later, Yandy sat at her kitchen table writing a chapter for her second book. This one wasn't about heartbreak or resilience, it was about gratitude. She wrote, "Some people come into your life to love you, some come to teach you. If you're lucky, one person does both." She paused, smiled faintly, and underlined the last line twice. That winter, Mendeecees received a copy of the book in the mail, inscribed simply, "Thank you for the lesson." He placed it on his shelf beside family photos, right next to the first picture they ever took together. Years passed again. Birthdays, milestones, grandchildren. Time softened everything. Sometimes they crossed paths at family gatherings, their conversations easy, unforced. When their children toasted them one evening, "To the two who showed us love isn't always forever, but it can still be good," both laughed through misty eyes. As night fell over Atlanta, the city that had once fed on their chaos now seemed gentler. Yandy sat by her window, the hum of cicadas outside, her thoughts drifting through everything that had brought her here. Somewhere across town, Mendeecees stood on his porch, looking at the same stars. Neither spoke, neither needed to. The story had long been told, the lessons long learned. And in that stillness lives two hearts. Two roads that began together and ended apart. There was peace. Not the loud, triumphant kind, but the quiet sort that means you've made peace not only with each other, but with yourself. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was something rarer. It was real. And so, as the story of Yandy and Mendeecees closes its long, winding chapter, one truth stands out above all. Not every ending is meant to be loud. And not every love is meant to last forever. Some stories burn bright and then fade quietly, leaving behind lessons that echo long after the flame has gone out. Theirs was one of those stories, imperfect, beautiful, human, a love that stumbled in front of the world, shattered under pressure, and then grew into something neither of them expected: wisdom. They taught everyone watching that strength is not always about holding on, sometimes it's about letting go with grace. Yandy's journey from heartbreak to healing became a blueprint for resilience for every person who's ever had to rebuild after public pain. And Mendeecees, in his own way, showed that redemption isn't about convincing people you've changed, it's about quietly proving it every single day, through better choices. So as we leave their story here, remember this: love isn't a straight line. It bends, it breaks, it teaches. Sometimes, it brings two people back together. Sometimes, it leaves them standing apart, better than they were before. And that's still love. It's just love that grew up. Maybe you've seen a bit of yourself in their journey, the forgiveness that came too late, the fight to hold on, the peace that only arrived after you stopped chasing it. Maybe you know what it's like to love someone so deeply that even when it ends, a part of it lives inside you like a quiet heartbeat. If so, you understand what they finally learned: that closure isn't always an answer. Sometimes it's just silence that doesn't hurt anymore. And that's where they both arrived, on opposite sides of peace. Still connected by what once was, still proud of what they became. Yandy found her purpose in healing others, in turning her pain into power for a generation of women learning to stand on their own. Mendeecees found his purpose in building something lasting out of his mistakes, in showing that even broken men can become builders. And between them stood time, a long, patient teacher that turned hurt into growth. So, what about you? If you've made it to this part of their story, if you've watched them rise, fall, and rise again, take a moment to look at your own life. What pain are you still carrying that could become something beautiful if you just stopped running from it? What relationship, what memory, what lesson could you release tonight and finally call peace? Because that's the message buried deep beneath all the noise. Healing doesn't start when they apologize, it starts when you stop needing them to. Their story began with headlines, with whispers, with tension that made the world lean in to watch. But it ends here, quietly, with respect. And maybe that's what makes it worth remembering. Because in a world addicted to drama, they found peace. And peace, that's the real victory. So if you're watching this right now, take a breath. Think about the things in your own story that hurt, the chapters you wish had ended differently. Then remind yourself, you're allowed to move forward. You're allowed to grow past the version of yourself that tolerated less than you deserved. And you're allowed to forgive without reopening the door. That's what Yandy did. That's what Mendeecees did. And if they can rebuild after years of love, loss, and public chaos, then maybe you can rebuild too. Maybe your ending won't look like theirs, but maybe it'll still bring you the same kind of peace. Because peace isn't soft. It's earned. It's built out of nights when you wanted to scream but stayed silent instead. It's made from choosing yourself after years of choosing someone else. It's what comes when you stop proving your worth and start protecting your energy. So, as you leave this story behind, don't just scroll away. Let their journey remind you that no matter how messy things get, you can start over. You can rewrite your story. You can build something beautiful out of what broke you. And if you're still wondering what happened next, maybe that's the point. Some stories don't need a sequel. Some love stories are complete the moment to people finally stop hurting each other and start honoring what they had. That's the quiet truth hidden in their ending. They didn't fail, they grew. And now, it's your turn. Take what you've learned from their story and ask yourself, what part of my past am I ready to make peace with? What version of myself am I finally ready to forgive? Because somewhere out there, someone is waiting to see you rise again, just like they did. Maybe it's your family. Maybe it's your future self. Maybe it's the world. So don't let your heartbreak define you, let it refine you. Take your scars, your lessons, your pain, and turn them into purpose. If Yandy could stand tall after being broken in front of millions, you can stand tall too. If Mendeecees could rebuild after losing the woman who believed in him most, then maybe redemption is closer than you think. Their story ends in peace, but yours is still being written. And if this moment feels like an ending, maybe it's just the beginning of something new. So before you click away, take a second, hit like if you believe in healing, hit subscribe if you're ready for your next chapter, and drop a comment below telling us, what did this story teach you about love, forgiveness, or yourself? Because maybe someone scrolling by will need to hear what you've learned. And remember, every love story teaches something. Some teach patience, some teach strengths, and some, like Yandy and Mendeecees, teach the hardest lesson of all. That letting go isn't losing, it's growing. So wherever you are, whatever part of your story you're in right now, keep growing, keep believing, keep choosing peace. This was the story of Yandy and Mendeecees' story that began in fame, burned in chaos, and ended in grace. And if you're still here, listening, maybe it's because a part of you knows, real love doesn't always come back. Sometimes it just leaves you stronger than before. Thank you for watching. If you felt something in this story, let us know below. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded that peace is possible, even after heartbreak. Because love may fade, but lessons like this one, they stay. Atlanta woke up to chaos. A single Instagram story from Yandy Smith set the internet on fire. "I'm done for real," she wrote, her tone sharp, final, and heavier than any words she's ever shared online. The photo attached wasn't of her, though. It was of a blurred figure, Mendeecees' hair, standing beside a woman no one had seen before. The image was grainy, taken from across a restaurant patio under warm city lights, but it was clear enough. His hand rested on the woman's chair, his head tilted close, his smile unguarded. The post vanished within minutes, but screenshots multiplied like wildfire. Before sunrise, every gossip page, fan forum, and reality blog had a version of the photo plastered across their feed. By the time Love and Hip Hop Atlanta fans logged on, theories had already taken root. Who was the woman? Was it a business dinner? A cousin? A setup? Or was this the beginning of the end for one of the show's most complicated couples? Blogs dug through archives, comparing hairstyles, outfits, and tattoos. One frame from the restaurant's surveillance camera, allegedly leaked by a waiter, showed the mystery woman laughing as Mendeecees reached across the table to adjust her bracelet. Fans were divided. Some rushed to defend him, calling it harmless, claiming Yandy was overreacting again. Others said this was proof that Mendeecees had never truly changed, that his calm demeanor and polished apologies had always been for the cameras. "You can love a man for 10 years and still not know who he is," one fan wrote beneath a repost. "Yandy deserves peace." Within hours, comments turned brutal. Celebrities unfollowed Mendeecees, while one of Yandy's closest friends, Carly Red, posted a cryptic story of her own, a photo of wine glasses clinking with the caption, "New beginnings taste sweet." The gossip didn't stop there. Insiders claimed the couple had been arguing for weeks, ever since Mendeecees' recent business trip to Miami. A source close to the production said cameras had caught tension between them during a private event at Spice's studio. "She felt disrespected," the insider whispered. "He kept saying it was all work, but she saw the messages." Mendeecees remained silent through it all. No posts, no statements, just a cold stillness that made fans uneasy. Silence, in the world of reality fame, speaks louder than any denial. It wasn't just about a dinner anymore. It was about the years of loyalty, forgiveness, and public image built on fragile trust. And now, that trust seemed shattered. As the world began to speculate, Yandy unfollowed him, deleted their family photos, and liked a post that read, "Sometimes peace means walking away quietly." The story spread beyond Atlanta. Talk shows debated it, radio hosts teased it, and fans dissected every move. Everyone wanted to know, who was this woman, and why did Yandy sound so certain this time? Because those last words, "I'm done for real," didn't sound like a stunt. They sounded like an ending. And the city that watched their love story unfold on-screen braced itself for another explosive chapter. One that might finally reveal what happens when love, loyalty, and fame collide in full daylight. The night after Yandy's post, Atlanta felt different. Every corner of social media buzzed with whispers, and everyone wanted to know the same thing: who was that woman sitting across from Mendeecees? The photo had been reposted so many times that it no longer felt like a rumor. It felt like evidence. Blogs added arrows, circles, and captions, claiming the mystery woman worked with a real estate group in Buckhead. Another site went further, saying she was recently seen at the same charity gala where Mendeecees had appeared alone just a week earlier. The details blurred between truth and speculation, but the image burned itself into people's minds. Yandy had gone quiet after deleting her story, but silence from her was louder than any rant. She had always been the one to defend him, the one who kept their family together when people doubted her choices. Fans remembered the years she waited for him, the visits through glass windows, the vows she stood by when everyone told her to leave. And now, that same woman was done. For real, she said, and those two words cut through everything. As the gossip swelled, a shaky video began to circulate online. It showed Mendeecees walking out of a dimly lit lounge around midnight, the same woman by his side, both laughing as if unaware of the phone recording them. She touched his arm once before getting into a black SUV, while he stood outside for a moment, checking his phone before driving off in another car. The clip lasted less than 20 seconds, but it was enough to light a fire. People froze the frame where he smiled, zooming in, captioning it with heartbreak emojis and betrayal hashtags. By morning, Yandy's friends began to pick sides. Carly Red posted another story, showing herself at brunch with the caption, "No more fake energy." Erica Mena commented under a gossip page, writing, "Sometimes you have to let the streets teach the lesson." Even Spice, who usually stayed out of other people's mess, liked a comment saying she warned him. Fans caught it instantly. "Not Spice liking that." One wrote, "Nah, this is deeper than we think." Inside their home, sources said, things were tense. Mendeecees tried calling Yandy repeatedly, but she wouldn't answer. One insider claimed he showed up at their condo around 3 a.m., knocking on the door until security asked him to leave. Neighbors heard the argument through the hallway, his voice low, hers sharp and shaking. "You embarrassed me," she yelled, according to one witness. "You made me look like a fool again." The next day, she posted a picture of herself in a sleek black dress. No caption, no smile. It was the kind of quiet power move that spoke volumes. The comments filled with support. "You glowed up while he messed up. Stay strong, queen. We knew this was coming." But among the love, there were also questions. What really happened? Was this a misunderstanding blown out of proportion? Or had Mendeecees actually crossed a line? By the end of the week, the rumor took a new turn. Someone claimed the woman's name was Tia, a public relations manager who had recently started working on a campaign with Mendeecees' company. Screenshots appeared showing her liking his posts, then quickly unliking them once people noticed. Another account claimed to have seen them together at a film premiere afterparty. They were close, the post said, like they forgot people were watching. Yandy, meanwhile, was seen in Miami for a women's empowerment panel, smiling for the cameras but looking distant in every candid shot. Fans noticed her wedding ring was gone. When a reporter asked about her husband, she gave a short answer, "I'm focused on myself right now." The clip went viral, especially when someone slowed it down and caught the flicker in her eyes, a mix of sadness and defiance. Behind the scenes, producers from Love and Hip Hop were scrambling. Drama like this meant ratings, but they knew it was real too. One production assistant leaked that cameras had been sent to follow both of them separately. They didn't plan it, the assistant said. "It's just unfolding." Yandy reportedly refused to film with Mendeecees until he told her the full truth. "Either he clears his name, or we're done," she told them. Then, in a shocking twist, Tia broke her silence. In an exclusive interview with a small gossip blog, she claimed everything was being blown out of proportion. "We met through business," she said. "He's a kind man, respectful, and it hurts to see people twist it." She denied any romantic involvement but admitted they had spent time discussing projects over dinner. Fans didn't buy it. "Girl, dinner at midnight ain't business," one comment read. Mendeecees finally spoke up days later in a short Instagram live. "I ain't perfect," he began, his voice tired but steady, "but y'all got it wrong. I ain't out here disrespecting my wife. We just dealing with some things. That's all." The comments exploded in real time. Some begged Yandy to forgive him. Others called him manipulative. But the one comment that everyone noticed came from Yandy herself. 3 simple dots, posted under his live replay. Nothing more. Those dots said everything. She was watching, she was listening, but forgiveness, this time, didn't look certain. And as Atlanta watched the story spiral, one thing became clear: the truth, whatever it was, had cracked something that might never heal again. Days passed, but the storm didn't calm. Every update felt like gasoline on a fire that refused to die. Bloggers started piecing together timelines, making charts of Mendeecees' public appearances, connecting dates and places like Detectives Kasinga scandal. Fans pointed out that the night he was seen with Tia, Yandy had been hosting a charity dinner across town. "So he wasn't with her," one user wrote, "and he was dressed exactly the same in that photo. It's matching." The comments flooded with broken hearts and disbelief. Yandy's supporters grew louder. They called for her to move on, to protect her peace. Hashtags like #TMyYandy and #SheFinallyDone trended for 2 days straight. Videos surfaced of fans crying while talking about how much they looked up to her, how her strength inspired them through their own breakups. One clip, with over 1 million views, showed a woman saying, "She stood by him when nobody else would. She deserved forever, not embarrassment." Mendeecees tried to fight back against the noise. He posted a photo of himself with his son, captioned, "Real men don't explain rumors, they keep being fathers." The comments, though, weren't kind. "You should have been a husband first. Too late for captions, bro." Some defended him, saying he was being unfairly judged, but even they sounded unsure. One fan wrote, "I want to believe him, but Yandy's eyes said it all." Then came another twist. A new video leaked this time. Clear, not grainy. It showed Mendeecees and Tia at an art gallery, standing close, whispering, laughing. He leaned in to show her something on his phone, and she rested her hand lightly on his shoulder. It didn't look staged. It didn't look innocent. The person who uploaded it claimed it was from 2 weeks before the restaurant photo. "They've been out together." The caption read, "Don't let him fool you." The internet exploded again. Proof, caught. This is over. Every gossip site ran the clip with dramatic music and slow motion. Even people who didn't watch the show started sharing it. It was more than reality TV, now it was a public heartbreak unfolding in real time. Yandy didn't respond right away, but that night, she went live. No filters, no music, just her sitting on her couch, eyes red but voice steady. "I'm not here to bash anybody," she said softly, "but when someone keeps showing you who they are, you have to start believing them." She paused, glancing at her phone like she was reading comments. "I've given grace more times than I should have, but peace comes when you stop explaining yourself to people who don't value you." The live lasted only 5 minutes, but it broke every fan's heart. People screen recorded it, crying in the background. Celebrities commented messages of support. "You handled this like a queen," wrote Rashida. "He fumbled real love, added spice." Even Mona Scott, the show's producer, reposted a clip with the caption, "Growth looks good on you." Back in Atlanta, Mendeecees was seen arriving at his studio with a hoodie pulled low over his head. Paparazzi shouted questions. "Is Yandy really done? Who's the woman, Mendeecees?" He didn't answer, just pushed through the doors. Later, an insider revealed that he was angry not just about the rumors, but about how fast people had turned on him. He said he can't believe Yandy aired their business like that, the source claimed. He feels betrayed too, but the damage was already done. Producers reportedly called both of them in for a private meeting to discuss how to handle filming. Yandy refused to shoot any joint scenes. "I can't pretend everything's fine," she told them. "Not this time." Mendeecees allegedly stormed out halfway through, saying, "Y'all making me the villain again." Meanwhile, Tia's social media disappeared. Her friends claimed she had left town after receiving threats from fans. "She didn't mean for it to blow up like this," one friend said anonymously. "She thought he was separated." That word "separated" set off another explosion online. Blogs twisted it into headlines. Mendeecees told his alleged side piece he was single. It didn't matter if it was true. The damage to his image was unstoppable. Late one night, Yandy posted a black screen with one sentence, "Sometimes, love runs out quietly." Fans flooded the comments with heartbreak emojis. "She's letting go. This is really it." Her close friend Juju wrote under it, "You gave everything. Now give yourself some peace." The next day, cameras caught Yandy leaving a spa with her mother and daughter. She smiled faintly for the paparazzi, but the tiredness in her eyes told another story. When a reporter asked if she would ever forgive Mendeecees, she said, "Forgiveness isn't the same as going back." Behind closed doors, though Mendeecees wasn't done fighting, he reached out through mutual friends, sending messages, flowers, even recording a private apology video. One insider leaked part of the clip, where he said, "I know I messed up. I should have been home. I never meant to hurt you." The internet debated whether it was genuine or damage control. Still, no matter what he said, fans believed the chapter was closing. And yet, as the tension thickened, whispers began again, rumors that the two had been spotted at the same restaurant weeks later. Sitting far apart, not speaking, but in the same room. Some swore it meant they were trying to work things out. Others said it was just coincidence. But nothing in Atlanta ever stayed quiet for long. And everyone knew this was only the beginning of